All right, and here we are. This is the Working Title Show with Zach Sams, and we are back. Here we are. This is the Working Title Show with Zach Sams. I am glad to be back. It's a much warmer and prettier day than last time we recorded, so excited for that. Spring is definitely here in Dallas, and excited about our show today and our guest. We have Louis
Darrouzet.
I've already jacked it up. Louis, go ahead and pronounce your name for me.
Louis Darrouzet.
Darrouzet, and you're the CEO of the MCBA, which is the Metroplex Civics and Business Association.
Correct.
Well, it's really glad to have you on. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today. It is much nicer outside than it has been in the last couple of weeks.
And I'll tell you what, the rain has been nuts, but man, everything's blooming, so I'm ready for spring and some warmer weather. The longer days are here.
Yeah,
Can't beat that.
It's nice, and it seems like even in the real estate industry is starting to wake up again. I'm starting to see for sale signs going up left and right.
Oh man, that's the business I'm in, and that's really good. My wife was telling me again yesterday that she hopes the market comes back soon. So not sure what she was getting at there, but
that's tough.
But yeah, she's brought it up a few times. I tried to warn her in 22 when the rates were ticking up. I'm like, it's going to get a little slower here, but I don't think she listened.
Yeah, it's been interesting. The interest rates have been. It's a difficult position for a lot of the different sectors across real estate. I mean, a lot of the commercial guys are really struggling, especially with a lot of the vacancies. They're combating that in a lot of ways downtown by converting some of those old office buildings into residential opportunities. But it's still that only just makes the total available just a little bit less. So it's been an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. That's kind of the part that we actually haven't really see play out yet with the office, asset class. We all know it's in trouble. We know that the vacancies, are pushing up, but a lot of them, we haven't seen the big foreclosures and those types of things happen, and some of the terms on office are a little longer, and a lot of those are on 10-year terms, and those just quite hadn't turned over. The leases are longer, and so those are playing out. So I think there's still some activity to happen there, and which is also probably why it makes it harder downtown to do some of those conversions, because if the basis isn't right to buy one of those buildings and do that type of big redevelopment, then they're just going to kind of sit there for a while. And so, and then you talk about, the Class B and C offices that, even if you do want office space, you don't want to go there. And so they're just in a lot of trouble. So it'll be interesting to see how all that comes out. The interest, it's so interesting to me when you hear, the Fed, after they talk, and they're like, well, too many people have jobs, so we can't cut interest rates. We need to rise them and stuff. And I'm like, so what we're saying is we want to put people out of work to fix, the economy. I'm not exactly sure how that is the right scenario, but they're dead set on it.
Right. It's that was always going through business school at SMU.
Yeah.
It was interesting as I looked at the financial policy class and just thinking about the Fed and how they want to keep unemployment around 4%.
Yeah.
And then they want to keep interest rates around 2%. And those are their main two metrics. And it's, I didn't...
Or inflation at 2%.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. Inflation at 2%, unemployment at 4%. And,
right.
And at the time, I hadn't really thought about why those were. And I think when you see unemployment go above 4%, society starts to break down. And that's why that tier is set. And I think we saw a lot of that during the pandemic, right? Yeah. When a lot of people were unemployed or didn't have things to do, rioting, all kinds of problems. I mean, maybe they were fueled by an event or or one specific
Yeah,
instance.
a lot of things going on at that time.
But
too,
what added fuel to the fire was the fact that 6, 7, 8, 10% unemployment. Those higher level people it's like idle hands. They don't have anything to do.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say.
So they just latch on to something, and a lot of that becomes kind of civil discourse in a not very positive way.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't that long ago, but I mean, you think back at it now. I mean, there was scary stuff we were watching on the TV that was going around, and not and close to home.
Sure.
When you see people, the rioting, and it wasn't as big as it was in other places, but I mean, in Dallas.
Yeah.
My sister at the time lived in a high-rise apartment in downtown, and they're, one night they're there, then all of a sudden, there's all kinds of just craziness going down on the ground level, and somebody sets, I think there was a CVS or some type of retail place on the bottom of it was set on fire in the building they're in, and they're like, well, I don't want to go down there with all that's going on, but the building's on fire. I mean, thank God nothing actually happened. They put it out and they were okay.
Sure.
But it was just like, in Dallas? Are you kidding me?
Well, it can happen in any city, and it comes down to the local leadership, right?
Yeah.
And who is sitting, in Dallas, it's the horseshoe, right? Who's sitting at the council and the mayor and the city manager, and who's, what messaging is getting out? Are they fueling that fire, or are they trying to kind of quell and calm any disturbance? And I don't know if, some cities did it better than others during those government lockdowns, and some opened sooner than others, and the ones that did, their businesses, community thrived quicker.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of those cities and states that took months and months or even years to fully open back up, a lot of the businesses either left or shut down. And it's just they couldn't, in business.
I heard something like 70% of, small businesses, mom and pop shops, just did not make it back. And that seems like a massive number. I don't know how accurate that is. A lot of stats are made up, but but I mean, there's a lot of places that we used to go to that aren't around anymore.
Of course. And in business school, that you think about, I think, they don't. When you build a business model, you're like, all right, well, what if sales aren't good, or the revenue starts to drop off, right? Yeah. And they do these analysis for the banks now after the 2008, 2009 kind of housing crisis,
right,
when we lost the banks, or some of them, right? And the kind of the thought is like, all right, if these unfortunate scenarios play out, are we going to have enough cash? Are we going to remain liquid for how long? And it was interesting because we have several organizations that are in the hospitality industry, which is one of the industries that didn't get bailed out during the pandemic, and people weren't traveling.
No.
So
and if you did travel, you're the only person in the airport.
Right, and they're of a 25-story hotel, they're operating one floor, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can stress test a business and feel pretty good about it, and maybe it's a 20-30% drop in revenue, but most businesses don't stress test a 95% drop in revenue, like overnight, and that's what happened in a lot of industries, and most people are just trying to make payroll. They're trying to make their rent. They're trying to make their mortgage on just the basic operations of their business. And if you take the revenue down that low, it's like, well, eventually, it's not even that eventually.
I guess you could stress test a 95% drop in revenue and it equals out of business. You know, if that's sustained in any amount of time, I'm sure.
Yeah, either out of business, or you've got an enormous amount of cash that's not being deployed to create more jobs or other things in the industry. It's just sitting there just as a just in case rainy day fund, which that doesn't make sense either.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dynamic that played out, and it just really, for me, showed how critical that local leadership is in each of these cities and counties, really, like, because some of them did it a lot better, and some of them not so
as
much.
Well, we didn't plan this segue, but that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Because, as we were talking before, and I was asking you about how the MCBA came into, or how it founded or how it came
Sure.
in. First off, like we've recently joined, and
I'm glad to have you.
I'm very glad, and I'm glad. It's funny because I always ponder, how, I consider myself just a very patriotic American veteran. I love our country. Kind of grew up in that. As I was growing up, I never really worried about, will I be able to have opportunity and make it.
Sure.
You have to do things. You got to work hard. You have to try.
Right.
But America has always been the place where, if I get up every day and I give it, my best shot, and I do that and I sustain that and continue to give it my best shot. It's not like you don't have ups and downs,
Sure.
but if you work at it and try, there's no better place in America that you got a good shot at having some success.
Couldn't agree more.
And I have two boys. They're 13 and 15, and when I think about where we are now as a country and kind of just the political turmoil and just turmoil in general that we see, that I think a lot of it kind of started in 2020. I mean, it was there before, but that it's like you put through some gas on the fire a little bit.
Sure.
And I wonder, do my boys feel they're 13 and 15, so I mean, they care about, how much time they're going to get on the Xbox at night, a lot of times. But
Oh, yeah.
it's, are they feeling that? Do they feel that, that American dream's there for them, and I hope that they do, but, man, if I was them right now, I don't know if I would feel the same way as I did at their age. And so when I went to the first luncheon the MCBA did, and I heard that we're really focusing on local elections and what's happening locally, and trying to encourage the business people and the workers and the population of the area to get out and be involved in making the decisions or electing the decision makers that are ultimately going to make the decisions for where we live. I was really intrigued, and it took me zero time to decide that I wanted to be a part of it. And I wonder, you hear the discourse on TV, that, people don't know what's going on, or that, they're not clued in, or, the voting public's stupid, they don't understand. And I don't fall into that, but I think it's more of we're not educated. We don't know enough information. I don't think a lot of people know that, the people that are the closest politicians are elected officials to them. They're town council, they're county judges, they're county commissioners. These people and what they do affect your lives instantly.
Yeah.
And the most. But most people seem to think they want to blame the president whenever things are going wrong, and the president probably has some of the least power, actually, compared to what we think their power is.
Surprisingly, yeah.
Right? But we think that they're the end all be all, and they jump right into it too. I mean, the minute, if there's good economic news, the president's right out on the news,
Yep.
taking credit for it. If it's bad economic news, then they have somebody to blame for it.
They blame the previous guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and I think, no stats on this, but I think a lot of people walk around thinking that that's where, what's going right or wrong, where those decisions are being made in Washington, but it's being made here.
Absolutely.
And I think this stat better than me, but the turnout, and let's talk Dallas, because
Okay.
turnout in Dallas for local elections is how much?
7-8% on the average for the municipal races. And that's actually 8% is probably the average for all 5 of the core counties. So Tarrant, Denton, Collin, Rockwall, Dallas.
And that's a scary number.
8%, yeah. I mean,
8% of the population is deciding who's making the rules and laws and things and the decisions that affect all of us here.
Yeah, and in some cases, it's being decided by 100 votes or less.
Right.
Right. I mean, if you think about the city of Addison, for example, there was only 1,600 total voters that came out total for the whole city. I mean, it doesn't have an enormous population, but 1,600. That's it.
Right. But if you have a candidate or you have an agenda that you want to make big changes that might not be good for other people, if you can rally up 500 voters, they can put you in office.
Absolutely.
That's scary.
It is scary. And it's, I think what is almost even scarier is that on some level, it's like there's this huge agenda on one side, or at least that's kind of the bill of goods that people are sold. I don't know how 100% true that is, or if it is, or if it's not. I don't know if you've seen the new Netflix movie, Leave the World Behind.
Is that the one where
that the Obama's executive produced, right?
We saw that. Freaky.
It's kind
that
of
boat coming into the shore. I'm just like,
kind of a little nerve-wracking. I mean, it was like #1 on Netflix for quite a while.
Yeah.
But there was a phrase, and I probably will butcher it, but the gentleman that owns the house says, you know what, the really scary thing is that what if no one's really in charge and no one's really pulling the strings, and it's just chaos, right?
Yeah.
That's where people walk around their everyday life, especially in America, and it feels safe generally, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain areas where like, all right, I got to be more careful, or but generally people go into a grocery store and there's food and people are polite and people are nice in the most part.
Yeah.
And that's just, you feel safe. But the thought of not having leadership or some kind of framework or structure that society is operating under is just chaos. And then there's no rules, and then it's very unsafe. And
it doesn't take long for that to break down.
No, and it's a scary thought, and a lot of people
we saw a little bit in 2020, right?
Right.
Where you couldn't get certain things, and then people they lose their minds really fast.
Oh yeah, I mean,
and they immediately go to toilet paper.
They need toilet paper.
Yeah, it's
what they needed, right? I mean,
I don't know. I always feel like I'm weird because that's not the first thing I think about, but that's a big one.
Well, that's just our supply chains, right?
Yeah.
It was an interesting dynamic, and we saw the same thing in beverage, really. Yeah. And because when I worked for Keurig Dr. Pepper, one of the things that was interesting is majority of the people that drink soda drink their lunch at a restaurant. It's packaged in a bag-in-the-box, right? So it's a fountain beverage. Mm-hmm. You go to any drive-through, you go to any restaurant. Do you want a Coke? Yeah, they just go to their machine, right? Or they go to the bar and use but it just hooks up to a bag-in-the-box. Well, you can't sell the bag-in-the-box on the shelf at a retail store.
Right.
So overnight, you saw your packaged beverage, which is the bottles and cans, went up 30%. Cans have been on decline for 3 decades, 1% decline almost every year. Mm-hmm. People are consuming less cans. They were not anywhere near ready to handle that kind of shift in the market. Right. So it's just so interesting what played out during the pandemic.
Yeah, really is. So MCBA kind of happened around 2020 or shortly after?
Right. So it was founded in 2021. And so
what's tell us the main goal or mission of MCBA?
So I would put it the main goal of the Metroplex Civic and Business Association is to ensure the continued success of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And
great mission.
It's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
You just create an environment where businesses and people can be successful. And you do that by getting our business leaders and our employees at our companies involved and active in the community, supporting local charities that don't create dependence, right? So teaching people how to fish, not just handing out a bunch of fish.
Right.
And then also voting in local nonpartisan elections and making sure they're kind of aware of those core issues that everybody wants.
What, we talked about 9%, 6% turnout in these elections. What do you think the main reason is that keeps people from going to their local elections to elect the person that's going to represent them more so than any other part of their life,
Right.
where they live?
Right. Well, there's a couple dynamics playing out that I've come to realize, and I think generally people care. They do. They want to care, and because they care, it feels bad if you go to vote and you don't know any of the names, or maybe you don't know half the names, right? Maybe you know your mayor who you want.
Yeah.
And your city council member, but you don't know the utility person or the school board or the county people, right? The county clerk or the city clerk. It's like, I didn't research those people, so now you feel like you're guessing or you don't fill it out. So then the experience, it starts off high because you check the first boxes, right?
Yeah.
But when you get to the down ballot, people are less familiar.
Yeah.
And that leaves people as they walk out the door feeling like, am I really contributing? Is my voice really matter? Because I don't even know some of these people, right? And it can be really confusing. And the way elections are run in this country are by county, which as I've gotten into it, it's realized how complex it is, right? Each county runs them a little different. Mm-hmm. And you have cities that overlap multiple counties sometimes. So then that makes complexities. So I give Carrollton as an example very often. We were talking about
great example.
Talking about it earlier, and I bring it up because when I was first born through like 6th grade, that's where we lived, was in Carrollton.
Yeah.
And Carrollton is a city, if you're not familiar, if people aren't familiar where it is, it's north of Dallas and kind of a little west of actual Dallas, like a little northwest, right on the west side of the toll road.
In between Louisville and, I guess, Farmers Branch, right?
Farmers Branch and Plano and Dallas. And that's, so let's say imagine yourself driving around Carrollton during election season or for local elections. Right. And in the city of Carrollton, there are 4 council districts, and then there are 3 at-large council seats. So 7 council members, but there's 4 districts. So it's like, which district am I in? Which districts are they in? Which seats are actually up this time? Because they're not all up at the same time, like in Dallas. Right. And that's at the city level. Then you have, at the county level, there's actually 3 counties that overlap Carrollton. So you have Denton County, Collin County, and Dallas County. You get to the school boards, well, you've got Louisville ISD, Plano ISD, Carrollton Farmers Branch ISD, and Dallas ISD. Wow. All overlap Dallas. So as a voter, if you're not certain what districts you're in, it's very overwhelming. And you see all these signs and you're like, I don't even know where to start. Right. And
you could know one of the school board candidates, but they're not even over the school board that your kid's going in. You live in the same town.
Right, maybe you know them and you're like, oh, I'm going to vote for that person. Then you get to the ballot and they're not on it. And you're like, oh, I thought I was my friend and the wrong district. So
how do you navigate, if the MCBA didn't exist, we'll get to how the MCBA is helping there, but you got to go on a fact-finding mission on your own.
Correct. And, the Secretary of State can help with that. And if you go to the county you live in, a lot of them will have sample ballots for you. The problem is they don't have to do that. Right. And there's no rule about when they have to set the ballot. Really, there's some dates that people have to file to be on the ballot, but then it's like 45 days before Election Day, they have to mail out the absentee and military ballots, that's by law. But I don't know if there's, I don't think there's any, what happens if that doesn't actually take place? There's no punishment or anything. It just, that's the requirement. So
And you can't take your phone into the ballot box
Correct.
and like, look up candidates' names.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Can you even take a cheat sheet in there if you made
can.
your own notes? You can. So if you made your own notes on who you want to vote for, you could bring that in.
Right, and that's what we help out with the MCBA
Right.
in a lot of ways. And people say, and we talked about it earlier, the whole like, what does nonpartisan mean?
Right.
Well-
Which this was new to me. This was so I can't be the only one that didn't know this.
Right.
Maybe I am.
No, most people and
Because when you think of candidates, you think of, well, what party are they with?
right,
Right.
no, but really, what party? No,
Right.
and in Texas, the local races, so mayor, city council, school board, utility district, mud district, all of those races are nonpartisan.
Is that by like state law or?
I'm not 100% sure if that's
not
state
either.
law,
Yeah. But they're all like that.
but they are like that. And what's interesting about it is that while you may have an idea of how that person has voted, or maybe they publicly declare, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, they're not backed by the party,
Right.
They're not running on a party ticket, right? Which is why you don't see them on the primaries,
Right.
right? And it's why you will get
That's why you get so many runoffs, I would assume.
Right.
In the local races.
You do. And you have so many people that will run for the same seat.
Yeah.
And it's like a bunch of independents, basically, is what it is. So that is truly a nonpartisan race in the sense of that it's not Democrat or Republican, which is, I think, a positive because it allows those individuals to focus on the core needs of the city and not kind of the social debate that a lot of the state and federal
Elections
leaders
getting
are
to, yeah.
actually having to debate, because the city doesn't decide a lot of the social stuff. They decide, are they taking care of the roads? What are your property taxes, right? Or what are they doing with crime, the police force? What are they doing with the homelessness situation, right? Those are the things that they have direct control over. So most of the stuff that we experience in our daily lives is what those leaders are taking care of. And last year in the municipal elections, most people consider themselves voters.
Right.
And what they mean by that is they vote in the midterms and the presidential elections.
Right.
27% of the people that voted in our organization last May, it was their first time to ever vote in a municipal election. Like, that's huge.
Wow.
And many of them were so excited. And we had several that went and voted and then felt so good about it, they went and grabbed their friends and said, we're going to go vote, you're going to vote too. And they went and did. And that's really the goal, is to create that dynamic in a place where, coming out of 2020, when there was just so much divisiveness and so much...
Uh-oh. Thought I silenced that.
No, it's all right. There was so much divisiveness coming out of 2020 when it came to voting in elections and just politics in general.
Right.
Focusing at the local level allows us to narrow the focus enough to where it's mostly common ground.
Yeah.
And that helps people feel connected to each other. And we've seen it time and time again with our member companies that have joined and have done our program. And now they are just getting excited about every election, and they're talking about it in the office. And it's a unifying thing instead of something that has been divisive in the past.
Yeah. Did we see, the pandemic opened our eyes to how powerful our local leaders can be. So I consider that a silver lining, because it was kind of a wake up. Did we see any increase in local voting when people had this like aha moment? Oh wait, I didn't know that the county judge could shut everything down.
And I think yes. So I think generally yes. Is it where it needs to be? No, not yet.
Right.
I think there's a general awareness, and that's been kind of our mission. A part of our mission at MCBA is to, we've got 45,000 people in our newsletter right now. We've just
great.
continued to grow it. And it's just kind of reminding people of those core things, those core city services that the city's got to get right. And the more people that are paying attention, the more people that are getting educated, they just are starting to participate at a higher level. And like I said, our member companies and their employees last year, we were about 1% of the Dallas vote.
That's huge.
Which is huge. And our organization has double, maybe a little more than it did last time, last May already. So it's just continuing to grow.
It's resonating with people. They see the needs.
It is, and it, there's some companies that get nervous and they say, well, we don't want to talk about politics. We don't want to ruffle anyone's feathers. And it's like, our goal is not to ruffle anyone's feathers either, right? It's actually, if you do it right, it should bring people together, and it has time and time again, and wherever the business leaders kind of are politically, nobody wants crime.
Yeah.
Right. I said earlier, like even criminals don't want crime. They want to steal the purse. They don't want someone to steal the purse from them. Right.
Exactly.
Nobody wants homelessness.
Yeah.
Like we want to help solve that problem. No one wants high taxes. No one wants high regulations. You want to be able to get permits done quickly, and we want great schools.
We can all agree on those things, unless you're just totally out to lunch.
Right. And I think people get defensive, and that is also an interesting thing that I've noticed. I was like, why are we so far apart?
Right.
Like politically, right? And we live in the nonpartisan world, but even in the partisan world, like it's so divided, right? And how do we as a society get so divided? And I think I'm going to draw a correlation, or my hypothesis is that, so in the 1940s, that was when kind of the idea of marketing started. It was after the Industrial Revolution. If you wanted to buy a manufacturing line, you could.
Yeah.
Because that was now a thing, and you could start your own line, right, of clothing or maybe cars or whatever, right? Well, the next question then was like, how are your cars different than my cars?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you why I'm different and better, right? And that's marketing. That's exactly what marketing is. You fast forward that to the 90s when the internet boomed and everybody was making online stores, starting to do e-commerce. And then even further to social media, where people are individual brands and individual businesses, is that the goal for marketing is to try to make yourself more different, or like as different as you can be, to separate yourself as far away from everyone else as you can be. And then, we've just slowly as a society, everyone wants to kind of put themselves as far away from everybody else and then wonder why they feel disconnected and depressed. But in all actuality, everybody's way more alike than they are different.
Yeah.
Like those things we talk about, everybody wants those, right?
Yeah.
And I think if they tell you they don't, part of them's probably lying to themselves.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And I think it's the politics and the partisan things that, one, it keeps people not wanting to go into those areas of conversation, one, because, most people don't want to get in arguments and fights.
Sure.
And I think, that's why people, they don't want to go into the religious talks or the political talks, because that could, they could lose friends over it, and we saw those kinds of things. But I think it's really intriguing and interesting that what MCBA is trying to put together, and the growth that y'all have seen is showing that, okay, there really is some common ground here that we can all agree upon. And I would hope that we get more people signing up, and definitely want to help and be a part of that. That's why I wanted to have you on today, to bring some more awareness to this. And
yeah, thank you. It's, we're 130 companies now with well over 10,000 employees, and helping all those individuals get out, share their voice, just kind of refocusing everybody on things that bring us together is a message that's really starting to resonate.
Yeah.
and just it's growing. So we want to keep growing it and have more organizations and companies join to keep that momentum going, and hopefully take Dallas, which is truly at an inflection point, right? It's gained population since the 1800s till 2020.
Right.
We've lost 3.5% in the last 4 years. If we
That's
don't,
so
I know
amazing.
it's like
No, I don't think anybody would. I would have never believed that if I hadn't seen the data. But
it's true, and
Yeah.
it's wild because DFW is in this season of unbridled growth,
Right.
really larger than it's ever been, and at the same time, the core of Dallas is losing people. It's like a donut, like kind of rotting out, and
you hope that would wake up our local leaders and things. I don't know if it is, but you would hope that would say like, hey, we need to recalibrate what we're doing here and how we're operating.
right, and I would hope so. But when we talked about it earlier, we've got city council members, which I try not to, we don't coordinate with any of them. We don't,
Yeah.
and I don't want to speak to their character or any of the social side of things. It's like, but from an experience perspective, none of them have a finance background.
Yeah.
Right? In Dallas, at least. And, how proficient are they at reading P&Ls? I don't think very many of them are.
Yeah.
And Dallas is a $4.8 billion budget. It's got 15,300 employees. That's a Fortune 250 company.
Right.
So is the caliber of our leadership, does that match up? And are we electing individuals that are capable of acting as a governing body for an entity that large? I would say maybe in some cases, and a lot of cases maybe not.
Yeah.
So getting individuals, helping our employees understand that, and see it from that perspective is like, hey, this is a big deal. Who we're electing is really important, and it's not about the little social thing that you
Right.
want to die on the hill on, right? Like that's cool and all, but they actually don't decide that.
Yeah.
They can tell you they like that or they have this position, but it doesn't matter. What matters is are they going to, fix the roads? Or is the police going to show up when something happens?
Right.
Because there's districts right now that if you get something stolen, you call in, that person could leave from that spot and drive all the way to Memphis, Tennessee before the cop would show up. 7 hours. I mean, that doesn't make people feel safe.
That'll make you leave.
It'll make you leave, and it makes people not even report the crime. So you have a city that's saying, oh, crime's down.
Not really.
Not really. You go look at, you go talk to your locksmiths and go talk to your window repair people for the cars, and they'll tell you it's not down.
Yeah.
They'll tell you it's up. But the city's going to sit there and
They just call their insurance company now.
Yeah. So it's the city gets away. As their performance gets worse, people don't call them.
Yeah.
They either leave or they just, I'm not even going to mess with it. So
Well,
then
we see the same thing in the real estate side, just trying to get permitting and those kinds of things.
yes,
done,
and that should be, in our head, it's like, okay, a city brings in revenue and a lot through property taxes, right?
Yeah.
If you can bring in real estate projects and create new revenue from new properties and new people living in your area or your region or your zone or your city, you're naturally going to increase your revenue.
Yeah.
Well, they're falling, I caution the city because they're falling into the same trap that a lot of these other major cities around the U.S. are. And as people are leaving, they're taxing the remaining people more.
Spiral.
That just only accelerates people leaving.
Yeah.
If they really want to increase their revenue for the city, you want people developing and building.
Yeah.
And there's an enormous amount of land that can be developed in, south of Dallas.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of, like, Hoke Global is doing some big stuff. Like Mike Hoke
He's amazing.
really, he's gonna speak at our luncheon later this year. He's, they're members, and he's got some huge visions for South Dallas and the southern, kind of sector of downtown. And like, there's a lot of people that want to make that area great and provide a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah.
So that's the one bit of hope that I have seen more than anything else is there are a lot of people in this city that care about this city and about all the people in it. And there may be groups that feel like they haven't gotten enough attention or no attention, or they've been left behind or whatever. But I in talking to as many people as I talk to, and many business owners, there's enough people that care.
Yeah.
And it's just that's our mission, is to kind of help steer everybody side by side. So
bring them together, bring the right candidates and elect the right people.
And helping to make the right connections at the right time, so that you have development happening in the right places, and that communities that maybe haven't had the support in the past now have it, and they have investment dollars flowing in that are creating more dollars for the city, right? And it's just, getting away from a lot of the subsidies that the city has slowly increased, and getting to programs that are teaching people how to fish, and bringing in workforce development programs, and bringing in the right kind of jobs in the right areas.
There's nothing that makes you feel better than having a job and providing for your family.
Yeah, I mean, because if you, I imagine if I empathize with an individual, let's say you're unemployed or you've got a very low level of employment. If you, and this is really where the American idea of the American dream started, right? If you say got on at the GM plant and you've never done this before, all right, well, you went from Wendy's or fast food or convenience store job making minimum wage or a little more, to now you're maybe a pipe fitter, or maybe you do skills training, become an electrician or a welder or an operator, and now you're making a much higher level of compensation. There's all kinds of health insurance, life insurance, retirement plans. Like, now you have the support system that maybe instead of renting that house, you're buying it.
Yep.
Maybe instead of letting it fall apart and having the city come and fix it on everybody else's dime, maybe you are fixing it yourself, and that is a twofold benefit. One, it helps property ownership become more prevalent in certain areas of the city. And two, the mentality and the mental benefits of doing it yourself, like you just said, buying your own house, fixing your own house, like having something to be proud of that you built and created and contributed to, makes people happier, and it makes 100%. Them feel like they're contributing to society, and that will raise like the collective consciousness, right, for everyone, right? If all the areas of DFW are fertile ground. I mean, I tell people all the time, if we do this right, if MCBA works right, then every area across the Metroplex should be so fertile that whether you're just getting out of prison or you're a Fortune 50 CEO, you should say, like, if we do it right, I want to go there because that's my best chance to be successful. Right? That's the kind of fertile soil that I'm talking about. It doesn't matter who you are. We want it to be so fertile that, like, no matter where you're coming from, you want to be here, and not just in certain pockets. We want that everywhere.
I couldn't agree more. Well, if you like what you're hearing and you want to be helpful or involved, the MCBA is doing the right things. How do people get more information on MCBA? Where do they go?
Well, mcbadfw.org is our website, and they can just reach out to us there, or any of our social channels, which is also the Metroplex Civic and Business Association. So we've got a lot of great luncheons that we host every other month, which are really neat events. If you're interested in coming to one of those, just reach out to us. We'll get you a seat. It's
really exciting. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This was great.
It is, and it's really cool to see an organization, making strides in the right directions to help the city out. And so I'm really excited to see what work we do here this year and through these elections, and hopefully we'll get some people that really want to continue to make Dallas prosperous for all.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Thanks again, man.
All right.
All right. This has been the Working Title Show with Zach Sams. We will see you next time. Thanks.